Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Season 6 of Stand Up and Stand Out, Parte y Destacate. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Nikki Green, and we're taking it back to the old school with our original guest interviews you have come to love. We spent the last 2 seasons learning more about the 2 books I launched this year, Chameleon Mindset and The Great Leadership Awakening. And now that I've come up for air from the writing and publishing process, I wanted to reach out to my network and share more of the great work others are doing. I hope you enjoy Season 6, and I look forward to hearing your feedback and comments on the fascinating topics we will cover with each of these new guests. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Stand Up and Stand Out. Another wonderful guest here from our community. This is Sunni from Leadership Global. So, Sunni, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself, how we met, and what you are up to these days?
Absolutely. So my name is Sunni. I live in sunny Florida. It's easy to remember that way. And I'm up to all sorts of stuff. I enjoy working with people in times of transition. So I work with businesses and people. I'm in ministerial school to become a minister of metaphysics. I have a toddler. I like to kayak. I love nature. I love humans.
I love it. So well-rounded and just so much, interest there in people. And I really love that, what you do. So Sunni is an intuitive strategist, speaker, author, mentor, and business scalability and growth coach who helps businesses sustain growth. I love that. I'm finding right now, too, a lot of people kind of jumped into businesses during the pandemic without a real plan for long-term growth. And, really helping them make it through, kind of these tougher economic times and out through the other side, I think is really important right now. So maybe share a little bit about how you got into this and why it's a passion of yours.
Absolutely. That's such a great point. And I think that that's such a great place to start for a business. You have a thing you're good at and you want to do it. And you want the world to have it. And then when it takes off, you can find yourself in that space of like, oh, schnigadoos. Like, I'm actually a real grown-up business owner and I don't actually have business knowledge. What do I do? Right. And that's when all you have to do is ask for help, right? Find those trusted resources. So my background is in corporate. I grew up there. I spent a ton of time in project management and senior level leadership roles. And then I retired in my early 30s. I realized I had enough money in the bank that when I hit retirement age, I would be set. And so I stepped away. And very quickly, people were asking me if they could pick my brain. Can I pick your brain about this? I have a business. I know you have business experience. Can I pick your brain about that? And the interesting thing, I was thinking about this and preparing for our conversation a little bit. What happened is my business actually started out of a desire to create boundaries for myself. Because people were coming to me wanting to grow their business and asking me for advice. And I was doing all these coffee dates and like, love a free coffee. And eventually I started to feel a little used up. And I was like, this doesn't feel so good, but I can't really be mad at the people who are using me up because I haven't given them a way to give back to me. I haven't set that boundary or created that infrastructure to allow them to pay me or compensate me or even know what I might want in exchange. And so that's when I actually created Wildflower Strategy to create some systems for people to compensate me to get that energy flowing. And that's just a really good example of how I play with people, right? If you're feeling like you're used up, if you're feeling burnt out, you just have to look at where do you have boundaries that you haven't set? Where do you have skills that you maybe don't have that you need training on? And where do you have things you're doing that you just don't like that, you know what? You don't have to because there's somebody out there that likes it. So we just have to get you guys paired up and figure out how to work together, right? So we get to play in all of that space when we think about scalable growth for a business owner.
I love that because, so often people spend a lot of time and energy on these coffee dates and hundreds of them throughout the time. And it's like, well, I don't have any more time in the day. And, I'm doing all these one-on-ones. And so actually a great networking friend of mine, he said, well, instead of doing all these, he recommended to kind of our networking group, have one a week, and then have a couple of people, because if they're all interested in you, they might be interested in each other, and kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone in a polite way, but really help each other, through these instead of everybody trying to have these one-on-one conversations. But I love it. It's so important. And I think it's such a hot topic these days about setting boundaries in our business, in our career, in our lives to make sure we're focusing on the things that are important to us.
It is. It really is. And one of the big things I did over time, and you have to get to a point where this is realistic for you, right? But like if somebody literally says, I want to pick your brain, I need your advice about something, I send them to my online calendaring tool where I have a brain picking session that has a dollar amount associated. They have to pay before they get my brain. And if they say to me, I can't afford it, I'm always open to a conversation about that. But you would be surprised how many people are totally willing to pay that I never would have expected. And how many people who I was like totally expecting them to not even blink at it. And they are like, never mind. That's like, that's totally cool. If it's not worth it's not worth your resources, it's not worth mine. And that's totally no harm, no foul, right? But that has saved me so much heartache of getting clear up front that my time has value and that you honor and respect that. And there's like that mutual sort of respect for each other.
Well, in creating a long-term, business together, a business partnership, whatever that looks like, there should be some sort of exchange. I'm giving you value, so you either need to give me value in return, right? Or financial benefits. I don't think that that's an unrealistic expectation. Even if we're friends, at some point, like I can't just keep giving away the farm for free because I have to make ends meet too. And it is that respect of, oh, okay, you have this knowledge, you've spent that time gathering it together. So let's figure out a way that we can help each other one way or the other, financially or business-wise, right? There's probably lots of opportunities there.
Absolutely. That also, what you're saying makes me think about too, the idea that people want to quantify our time as an expert. Like how much am I paying you per hour? And we have to take into account how much time and education has gone into me being able to complete that for you in an hour. Like I can do in an hour, especially in the world of project management, I can do in an hour what an entry-level person would take an entire week's to do because I have so much expertise. I don't have to go do the research. I don't have to go find things. I have all these tools. So when you pay me to do an hour of work, you have to take into account all of my resources, all of my training, all of my life experience that you're getting access to. And so I think sometimes we discount the value of our time in those coffee dates or in those brain picking sessions without really honoring ourselves. And again, it kind of comes back to boundaries of how much we bring to the table, regardless of your age. If you've got experience and perspective to offer, that has value. And so I think it's important that we value ourselves from a big picture perspective and not just at the micro level.
Absolutely. No, I know. I remember you were telling me that you kind of took a little detour for a while before you ended up in sunny Florida to really explore. So maybe share a little bit about that. Again, sort of setting boundaries and where you want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent about 4 years as a digital nomad. And for context, I finished my nomadic time right around the time that hashtag digital nomad was becoming a thing. Like when I started nomading, hashtags weren't really a thing yet. So I was kind of like right on the cusp of the trend. So this was a while back. And I spent about 4 years living out of a suitcase. So first it started with me realizing that I didn't really need to go home. Like I was having so much fun traveling and visiting clients. I was like, I don't actually have to go home between clients. And then it kind of turned into a game. How long can I go without going home? And I owned a house at that point. So I started renting out my house to kind of force me. Like I didn't really have anywhere to land. So then I put everything in storage. I lived out of a 5x5 storage unit. And I did that for 3 years. I lived full time on the road, just visiting my storage unit for different seasons of clothing. And then the 4th year I was on the road, I actually upgraded, air quotes, to my car. So I did a year-long road trip around the country. And that time was in particular right after the 2017 inauguration. And there was a lot of divisiveness in the media, which still feels pretty current now. But at the time, that was a pretty big shift for us. And I wanted to meet people. I was sick of hearing of all these human interest groups and all these groups of they that wanted harm to another they. I was like, no, right? Who are the people? I want to meet the people. So I spent a year on a road trip where I did several things all at once, which I don't necessarily recommend, but it served me really well. So I decided to barter for 100% of my needs to see if I could not exchange dollars. And then I also decided to try to stay in the homes of people who had extreme viewpoints, whether I agreed or disagreed with them. And so the way that looked was I spent a year spending 2 or 3 weeks bouncing between the homes of people, very extreme viewpoints, everything from like an evangelical minister to a Klan family to all sorts of people on the LGBT spectrum with different views on that lifestyle. I stayed with farmers. I stayed with somebody who just got out of prison, right? Like just really interesting people. So I did that for a couple weeks at a time. And then I would land with a family I felt really safe with for a few weeks to kind of restore my sovereignty. And then I spent a couple of weeks in nature, really regaining my energy. And then I would start it all over again. And I did that for almost a year. So I got to play in money and bartering, humans and energy and nature. It was oof, talk about life expanding.
I am just so excited about this because I do feel it's something more people need to do. So one of the places where I volunteer is the Human Library. And the Human Library is a global organization that tries to help people have conversations. And so the people are books, and then readers come in to learn more about their life story and learn about some of those challenges firsthand from someone who's experienced it. And I just really love that they help facilitate those conversations for those that are willing to learn, and they're still going to have obviously their viewpoints or their understanding from their background, but really starting to open up that dialogue. And I've met some just really amazing people through that organization that are really helping to do exactly this, right? Like, how do we bridge this gap of communication rather than keep staying so steadfast in our current beliefs without really having a foundation, right? And getting rid of the random they of whoever those pockets are, but really understand them as individuals, as humans, and know that we have probably more similarities than differences.
Yeah. I mean, that was the biggest lesson for me from that year personally, was that 99% of people are genuinely doing what they think is the right thing. Like 99% of people aren't out there trying to harm another human. That was a really big, to get that on a deep soul level, that caused some major shifts for me in my world.
And I like that we're honest too about that is tough work. It's not like, oh, I went from house to house and I just sort of absorbed all this stuff and it was magically so easy. It was no. And then I had to take some downtime. And then I had to have that time to process in a safe space, back to nature, right? To feel more grounded and really take that time in between before you kind of run in and go make the next sort of adventure and understanding in the next person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had to do quite a few things to make sure I took care of my own safety, right? If I was going into a home where they had a very different viewpoint than me, my agreement was to never try to debate or change anyone's mind. I just wanted to learn and observe. And in certain situations, right, even that, my presence could eventually cause tension and put me in an unsafe situation. So everywhere I went where there was any even inkling of that, my partner and my parents both knew exactly where I was, knew the police station that was closest, right? Knew where I was headed next. I checked in regularly. So just creating those structures where I could have the sense of freedom to explore, but also know that I had somebody watching my six just in case, But you see, I don't know. You see on Instagram and stuff, #van life and people living out of vans. And it is so much fun. And there is a lot of reality that goes into behind the scenes of that to make that something that is safe and nourishing and just an overall realistic lifestyle for somebody. And I got some real world experience of that before the hashtags were around.
I've traveled a lot. And this is one thing that I say is kind of the difference is, when I first started traveling, especially when I was traveling for corporate job, right? You're in a hotel, you're kind of in a very pristine version of what the city is, wherever you happen to be going. And went from everywhere from, big cities like London and Singapore down to small towns here in the US. And you have kind of a preconceived notion of what it is. But the more I went back to those cities as I continued to do work there, and then I met other employees. I met, other customers that we dealt with, and not just met them, had dinner with their families and really understood more of what their life was like. You see each of those towns and cities in such a different way. And I just want to encourage people that are doing that sort of digital nomad life. They're not just sort of there to take from the place that they're going, but really also to give back and really bridge that understanding while they're there as well.
There's also something that you get by giving, right? When you're in a culture and you take the time to immerse and really understand what's happening around you and the differences and why people are maybe different or why they eat something different or, why the traffic laws are different even, right? You learn, and by learning, you take that experience with you into whatever you do next and whatever life you build for yourself. So even by giving and taking the time to understand and to participate in the world around you, you're going to take away such rich experiences. And you have no idea how that's going to add up over the course of your life to open really cool doors for you. You just never know.
And it's funny because for me, this is actually how the chameleon mindset and my chameleon collective of my business began. Because as I was traveling, I could feel myself transforming. I could feel the way I felt about places, my ideas about things. Because even from the very beginning, when, I studied French in school, in high school and college, it was very different going away to go to school and actually being in France and seeing the different towns and understanding the dialect in more descriptive ways and the people and the culture. And it was just so different. and you just take it out of the textbooks and into real life, it really changes your perspective. And so then it was sort of like, okay, well, if I just encounter someone who happens to speak that language, even if I don't speak it very well, I would still try to make an attempt to, again, bridge that communication. And I think there's so many small ways we can do that, right? Even here in the US.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Green, and I am a life and business resiliency expert. I have been helping people for over 2 decades overcome their challenges and achieve their life and business goals. I wrote Chameleon Mindset for others seeking clarity while acclimating to new situations. This entertaining yet research-based guide to transitions will open your mind to unique strategies for finding purpose and achieving your goals. Through my new book, you will create the happy life you desire with 5 philosophies for change, beginning with C for creative adaptability. Move from resistance to resilience by assessing and adjusting your risk tolerance. The practical lessons in Chameleon Mindset will help you shift your mindset, sharpen your skill set, and overcome the things holding you back from dealing with change. We'll have the new online course coming soon. There are half a dozen modules in total, but the way you choose to pursue your destiny, it's up to you. Each module can be done independently or repeated as necessary to tackle new obstacles and new goals in your life. And you can earn extra Chameleon coins for uncovering them. What are Chameleon coins, you might ask? These are reward XP that you can earn to purchase additional Chameleon Mindset benefits as you progress through the course. You can get swag, group coaching, one-on-one coaching, exclusive event tickets, and networking opportunities. And if you collect enough coins, you can even earn a full-day VIP intensive with me to work solely on your goals. And by joining the Chameleon crew, you will also gain access to my network of thousands of influential people around the world with expertise to help you on your business, your personal endeavors, health and fitness, and so much more. Reserve a copy today and click below to be added to our subscriber list. Well, and I know you're off on a new adventure now, although you're not traveling as much. You're pursuing some spiritual goals as well. So maybe share a little bit about kind of where you're at on that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I stopped the full-time travel around 2018, 2019, which was just in the nick of time because a lot of people stopped traveling around that time. And so my partner and I kind of hunkered down in Orlando, which is where my family is, with some new family goals. And in the meantime, when I was traveling, I had a moment, super cliche. I was at the Grand Canyon meditating, and I had this really clear calling that I needed to be ordained. And if y'all don't know me, but anyone who knows me is going to they crack up when they hear that, because I am the last person on the planet people thought would go towards a ministerial path. But I'd been playing with this word ordained for a long time, and I really resisted it. But the word ordained means called to something. And so I'd been working with this idea that I was ordained for something that I didn't need to understand. And when I was at the Grand Canyon, I got the call, no, we mean actually get ordained, go to school and become an actual minister. And I'm like, what? No, thank you. So that was in, 2015, 2016 when I was traveling. And more recently, I finally, sometimes we're really stubborn when we feel the call of that higher being, God, spirit, whatever, we tend to resist. And in my experience, they usually win. We can resist all we want, but eventually it usually comes to pass. And so, yeah, I got to the point where I was like, all right, I give in. I will play the game. And so I am in seminary to become ordained as a minister of metaphysics. A lot of people ask what that means. And in my case, what that means is I'm studying a lot of historically known canons, including the Bible. And I take a modern metaphysical lens to each of them. So rather than taking them as historical fact or as empirical truth, I take my current lived experience and metaphysically interpret what I'm reading and apply it to modern day situations. And there's some spiritual, witchy kind of woo-woo stuff thrown in there too.
I love it though, because I feel like in this day and age, one of the things that when I was growing up, and going to church regularly with my family is just that sense of community. And I feel like, again, kind of circling back to that community aspect, how important that could be, that feeling of purpose, that feeling of connectedness, and how, maybe making some of that more relevant to the people of today, that they'll kind of find their way back to whatever is their own truth, not necessarily one way or the other, but I think that there is an opportunity for us to, again, continue opening up those lines of communication to bridge us together, and find some ways to connect rather than, keep pushing ourselves apart from each other.
That's really what I feel called to. My belief system is that it doesn't really matter what you call that being, that it's all really the same. You can call it God, Buddha, Allah. All of us are really talking about a higher source. And whatever verbiage and whatever way to that source feels good to you, I honor and I respect. What I think is important is that we stand in our truth in a way that allows other people to stand in their truth and not to barricade or barrier or, prevent them from being in their own truth. And in my experience, the more we all go down that journey and experience and really explore what is my truth, not what was I taught in school, not what my parents tell me, not what does my culture or my politics tell me. What do I know in my heart, in my soul, in my gut is true? And then we operate from that space. That's when we end up in flow. That's when we take these really crazy, juicy road trips. That's when we have a life that we never could have imagined. That's when we live a life that our child, like my 6-year-old self would look at my life right now and be like, no freaking way, you did what? Right? Like that happens purely because I live in my truth. Right? And that's not to discount a whole bunch of systemic stuff that's happening. And I feel like if all of us were to start with truth, we could start to unpack a lot of those systemic issues in a lot more expedient way. And so I think we're all ordained for something. Mine just happens to be a little bit more literal at the moment. But I think the more we follow that calling and we do the work, because it is work sometimes it's play, sometimes it's work, to find our truth and operate from it. I think we have an opportunity for a lot more peace and ease around us.
I can't say enough about how much I love this concept. And it feels so true because I can feel so many times in my life where I was pushing against what I felt was the right thing to be doing, the right path to be following. But there were so many people around me that was either the safe path that they thought of or the thing they thought was best for me, when in fact it was doing a lot of harm. And so I just really want to keep encouraging people to find that truth within themselves, to find the path that's going to lead them to that enlightenment and fulfillment. And it may not be an easy path. It definitely hasn't been for me. It's been a rocky road of ups and downs and uncovering some of those things from the past that may have held me back and the things I kind of keep repeating the patterns on. But I feel like that truth is so essential for us to find ourselves again and then also help and find each other.
Yeah, it is. And when we operate from that space, then community just kind of unfolds around us. When you're in your truth and you see someone else who is, there's that sense of like recognition and like you can feel each other vibing together and like, I want to spend time with you. And I mean, it's kind of what happened with you and I. We met through that Leadership Global and we were like in a group scenario and we were both kind of like, I feel you, girl. And so you just kind of like scope each other out. You know your people. And not everyone's going to be your people. And that's the beauty too, is it becomes so much easier to identify who's not your people. And I really encourage people to hang out with people that they don't 100% vibe with, so we don't end up in a full echo chamber. But there's a big difference between intentionally spending time with someone who you have a difference with so that you can expand your worldview and deepen your awareness versus feeling like you have to, or feeling like you're stuck, or not, like feeling a resistance to someone and not knowing why. So when we start to uncover that, suddenly we can be a lot more intentional and aware of how we're spending our energy and who we're spending time with and why. And everything, again, it just brings like this like peace and ease, and your shoulders drop and your jaw unclenches and the smile comes more easily. So I think it can be a pretty powerful thing to take on to find your truth.
I love it. It reminds me of this exercise I had to do during my MBA. And they said, write down someone that you work with that you really just can't stand and write down sort of all those traits that are driving you crazy. And it was so strange because then at the end of the exercise, they're like, okay, now look at all those traits and see how many of those are actually traits you possess. And so those things that are probably, rubbing you the wrong way a little bit might be things about yourself that you need to investigate a little bit further. So it was definitely a great exercise early on in my career to think about why, before I start judging and kind of putting things on other people.
It's funny. That reminds me, a really good friendship of mine blossomed out of both of us disliking each other. We were in a group together and we were both the alpha females, and it was like, rare. And we found each other in the hallway and I was like, I don't like you. And she's like, I don't like you either. And I was like, do you want to be roommates on the next trip? She was like, yeah, I think we probably should. And we ended up being like actual living roommates for a while. We became such good friends. So it's just about figuring out where that resistance is telling you to release and where that resistance is telling you there's an opportunity for growth and development. And knowing the difference between the two can take some time and some uncomfortable kerfuffles and snafus.
But that's how we grow, right? We have to be uncomfortable to know we're going in the right direction and then figure out where our boundary is on that uncomfortability.
Ride that edge.
Awesome. Well, time flies when we're having fun. Believe it or not, our time is up for today, but it was wonderful having you on the show. If people would like to learn more about you, Sunni, and get connected, where's the best place for them to find you?
Sure. You can find me at wildflowerstrategy.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn. My last name is VonMutius. It's spelled just like it sounds, and I'm like the only one out there. But wildflowerstrategy.com is usually the best place to start.
Awesome. All right. We'll drop those links in the show notes and we'll be sharing across social media. If you guys haven't done so already, please like, share, follow, whatever the things are, subscribe to each of the platforms where you can find this podcast. Thanks everyone for joining us today for another episode of Stand Up and Stand Out. You know you can catch us where all the cool kids hang out that do podcasts on all the major platforms. And if you want to connect with Nikki directly, you can get a hold of me on my personal site, thenikkigreen360.com. There you can check out my website, you can see any of my new books, you can learn more about this podcast, and follow us on social. Can't wait to hear from you, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.